Hello and welcome back to Life and Love Beyond or Post-COVID. All the names. Life and Love Post-COVID Summit. I'm your host, Ari Kardosh. And I think I'm just feeling super giddy and excited this morning because I have another one of my favorite humans, Kaela Atleework, aka Auntie Kaela, in our house on the call with us today. Kaela, hi.
Hi, Ari. Thank you so much for calling me in. I love this. I love this touch point across the world. I am calling in from California, the Eastern Sierra Mountains, about 45 minutes south of Yosemite, which is a very different place from where you are right now, Ari.
Very different place from Bali. And you're calling from your community.
Yes, exactly.
So exactly. Cool. I want to talk all about it. We'll tell everybody. Yes, we'll get there. Before we get there though, would you please just give us a little brief introduction to Kaela? Who are you right now?
Absolutely.
What is the meaning of life?
What is the meaning of life? Okay, nutshell, 3 minutes. I'll love a good challenge.
You can do up to 5. It's cool. You have so much interesting stuff to share.
I would say the meaning of life is connection. And I think this is so valid for coming together for this life and love post-COVID, because during COVID, most of us in the world experienced the greatest degree of disconnection on a global scale that we've gone through as humanity. And it's funny to have this come after a surge of connectivity in the last 20 years due to the internet, obviously, and then to have that removed and to have the components of the physicality and the present and the in-person intimacy removed. So for me, the meaning of life is connection. And it's funny because you asked me to talk about me, and the first thing that I do is start talking about the world. So nice to meet you. I'm Kaela. My pronouns are we and us. I'm an extremely we-centric person. My life revolves around being in the space and exploring the space between us. I'm fascinated in the domains of somatic connection, primarily the dance art form, contact improv, and different ways of co-regulating and pairing nervous systems, different practices that have to do with somatic intimacy, getting the human being back into a state of feeling safe with each other. And I'm also fascinated by the domains of verbal connection, of communication, of conflict resolution. I've been location independent for almost 11 years.
Wow.
It's funny hearing that come out. I'm like, yeah. And so I've been traveling around the world, living in different communities and really researching what it is that makes communities thrive, what are the magical ingredients that make groups of people that come together, whether they are from diverse cultural backgrounds or coming together because of their similarities. What creates intimacy in these spaces? What is it that allows us to open our hearts and access the parts of ourselves that we most want to be touched and seen in? And also, how do we do that in times of challenge? How do we do that coming out of COVID? How do we do that when we have been isolated for periods of time? There's a tenderness. We don't have our relating calluses on our bare feet anymore. So as we're stepping back out into the world, there's this place of desire and longing for closeness, and also this place of hypersensitivity from not having been caressed, from not having been in each other's presence for so long.
Yeah. And I've noticed there's just kind of this weird dichotomy of like, gosh, I'm so tired of being alone, or so tired of not receiving more intimacy in different ways. I say that emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, all the things. And yeah, at the same time, there's just like, shoot, do I know how to do this? Like, do I remember how to do it, or do I know how to do it now? Like, who am I now? How do I even start to go there? It's like excitement, but nervousness and trepidation all at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating.
Absolutely.
So you, my dear, I hear all the things you're passionate about, and you've traveled the world speaking on this and getting, and like you started a community that really focuses on this. and you lead authentic relating, and so many things you're doing too in the world to do that. Tell me a little bit how you got into it, your journey.
I love this. I love this question because it takes me right back to the roots of, I think, my core wound. And I think a lot of us choose to do something in the world that's related to our core wound.
Oh yeah.
And so one of my core wounds was being bullied as a middle schooler and a high schooler for years, ruthlessly bullied. When you see the teen movies and there's that weird girl that played trumpet in the school band and eats lunch in the bathroom, both of those things, very true. And so there's this fascination that I have with belonging, and really our desire and our need for belonging in order to thrive. Yeah. And so these days, this is something that is the most alive for me, and that comes from my story and how I got into this work, is the fascination with what is the psychological safety that needs to be present in order for us to feel a sense of belonging so that we can thrive as human beings. And so for myself, I realized that as a very we-centric person, I thrive when I'm in dynamics where the people around me are engaging with themselves, with each other, and with me in a way that makes me feel connected, supported, and inspired. And then, although that sounds very simple, there is an entire science to not only the way that we curate people, how we bring them together, but the way that we choose to interact and the way we choose to open ourselves to intimacy. And I would say my fascination within the work of intimacy and connection and communication comes from a deep desire from that little 11-year-old part of me that is like, I have so much love to give, but how do I fit in? Where is my place within this tribe, this society? How can I create relationships around me that fuel the parts of me that need to be held and safe? Because really, like, if our nervous systems can't relax into knowing that we are part of something and that there are beings there to hold us and to protect us, we can't thrive. We can't bring our greatest gifts into the world. So as someone who is location independent, that means I change my physical location every 3 to 4 to 6 months on average. And that means that I don't have the opportunity in the same way somebody who is living in a town where they have the same routine and the same activities and they have their groups and their friends. But I know that I have that need for psychological safety and belonging. So I began to research instantaneous intimacy. So how to enter into these deep connected places really quickly that take us into those profound moments of being able to feel like we belong without needing decades of shared history.
Wow. Intimacy. I love this. Can you tell us more?
Absolutely. I can always tell you more.
What have you found through all this research and through your own experimentation and through like getting to like play with this in the world? What have you discovered?
So one of the things is that nervous system is key. And so if I'm going to speak about this, I also want to invite us into this. So I want to invite all of us to take 3 breaths together right now in honor of our individual and collective nervous systems. So let's meet on an exhale. Let's breathe all of our air out. Go ahead and close our eyes. And then a deep breath in all the way to the top. And then when you release, sigh. One more deep breath in here. This time, drop your shoulders, relax your spine, relax your abdomen, and sigh. Breathe normally here for a moment and just become present in your body. The reason that I am inviting you to make sound on the exhale is because when we make sound with our throats and when we make sound with each other, whether it's on Zoom or in the same room, what happens is we activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So as you sigh and that sound massages the back of your throat, you're actually telling your body, I am safe. And as you hear the sighs of the people in the space around you, your animal body is hearing, these are not predators. And what we forget sometimes is that we are in an animal body. And so one of the first steps to accessing intimacy is this psychological safety. And it's rooted in the body. So together, we're going to take one more breath in, meeting on an exhale, emptying. And now a deep breath in all the way to the top. Sip in a little more, open the heart, and on the release, drop everything. And just notice. Do you feel a little more calm, a little more here, a little more safe in your own body? And slowly opening our eyes. When we feel safe in our own bodies, we can feel safe with each other.
Thank you.
Thank you. So once we've got the breathing out of the way, Ari, are you curious about what the next step of intimacy in my blueprint of engaging is?
Yeah. What's the next step?
So the next step is curiosity. So once our nervous systems start to relax, we start to go into a place of curiosity. Now, the key to curiosity is not having an agenda about what the outcome of the connection is going to be, and allowing the longing. So we might meet someone new and be like, "Ooh, I really want this to be a friendship." It's okay to have that longing. But curiosity really comes into play where we are allowing the other person to be themselves. We're welcoming all of them, and we're getting curious about the parts of them. So I'm not sure if any of you have ever had this happen where you're meeting someone for the first time and you get a barrage of questions coming at you. Where are you from? What do you do? Da 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 da. Do you have any kids? These details. Now, these are all very informational. So it's important when we're first starting to connect with people that we play a little bit in these realms of informational, but there's a really great way to lead to deeper and immediately more interesting conversation by gauging the interest of the person that you're talking to on the questions you're asking them. So what this looks like is, Ari, you and I can try this out. So Ari, I know you pretty well, but we're going to pretend that we're meeting for the first time. We both know how to do this because we're travelers. So instead of asking you a question immediately, I am more interested in you talking to me about what is exciting for you. I want to feel the aliveness in you than I am you answering the list of logistical questions I have.
Yeah.
So instead of answering my questions, you are going to show me on your hand the interest that you have in talking about that topic. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and you're going to give me a 1 through 5 with your hand based on which topic is the most interesting for you.
Okay, which 5 is most interesting?
5 is that's super interesting. I could talk about that for hours and I want to dive in. 1 is like, nah,
I don't really want to.
like I could go there. Not there's not aliveness. There's not a buzz in body around it.
Cool.
Okay, so let's see. So Ari, where is the place that you've traveled in the world where you had the most challenging experience?
And I'm just gauging right now.
Just gauging, exactly.
Yeah, I think I'd be like a 4. Yeah.
Ari, I would love to know more about your experience being pregnant with your 2 boys. And that
now we're on a whole new scale. My last answer goes down to 3. This goes to 5. Okay, got it. Now I'm figuring out where we're going with this.
What did you do today, Ari?
Oh, that's like a 2.
Yeah, exactly. What is your favorite thing to cook?
Yeah, I'm not feeling a lot of aliveness on that one right now. 2.
So as you can see what's happening between Ari and I is I'm starting to be able to gauge what are the things that she actually wants to talk about. And so when we go into a conversation from here, we're not just riding the coattails of whatever mainstream question popped out first. Where are you from? What do you do? And there's a way to really notice, like I saw her excitement come up so much about the experience of being pregnant. And I'm like, instantly I have other threads that I can follow with that. So this is a really great way of not wasting time when we're in initial connections, because our time is so precious and our attention is so precious. And so there's no reason for us to ever be stuck in a conversation that isn't enlivening for both people. And to create spaces of intimacy, we feel safe with each other when we can tell the other one is paying attention and is listening and is interested.
Yeah, I love that. So when you meet someone, do you play that game with them right away?
Very often. I'm like, hey, do you want to play some connection games or communication games? And usually I get a pretty good response.
I love it. For me, my question is, what are you feeling most passionate about right now? And that usually gets people talking too, it lights them up. But I was thinking, like, how could I modify that using this and play with it and be like, what would be most exciting to like be heard about?
Right. And
about
something that I would recommend is bringing in some questions that are a little bit more shadowy as well, because sometimes I've noticed when I'm asked, what is the thing you're most passionate about or excited about? And I'm like, I'm having a shit day. Like, I'm going to come up with a story for you. But I find that another one of the ways into this intimacy is vulnerability, reciprocity. A little bit of this, like, I'll show you mine, you show me yours. And so that's, for example, why I said, what is the place that you've traveled in the world where is the greatest challenge? Because it could be something that actually brings up a feeling of discomfort or failure or difficulty, that once you've allowed that feeling to maybe arise, whether or not you want to talk about it right now, all of a sudden that's on the table. And all of a sudden another flavor of you is welcome in the spread.
Yeah. No, I felt that too. When you asked, I was like, oh, I could talk about travel, no problem. Like depending on the question, I'm maybe 5. So when you said the most challenging, I was like, do I really feel like I want a aliveness to go there right now? Like, no, I don't feel like aliveness to go there right now. Like I could, but I really liked that. It was like, it would have brought up a different side. It would have brought up more of the shadow, more of the vulnerability. And those two don't always go hand in hand, but you know what I'm saying? So it would have brought a different feeling together.
Yes. Yeah. And an important thing in this is tracking, what are you actually available for in conversation. So if I go into conversation with genuine curiosity, this isn't me trying to provide you an experience. It isn't me also trying to like provide myself with entertainment. It's a space of unknowing, of what could emerge from this space between us, and then giving a spectrum of what I'm available to talk about. If I'm processing maybe some sexual trauma or challenge here, I'm not going to ask you per se about your sex life. And that's even though like it's a great topic.
I love to talk about
that space in yourself of like, what is actually alive.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. Okay. So step 1, breathe. Step 2, curiosity. Is there anything more to curiosity that you want to add?
Really, the curiosity piece is an unending exploration. It's giving us permission to be in the unknown. It's giving the other person permission to surprise us. When I allowed this mindset to land in me of like, I am going to give everyone that I engage with the permission to surprise me. Like that's something that feels alive, is permission to be surprised. It's a really great way of creating. Oh, you may, please.
This is great.
Because our first way of wanting to engage with folks is familiarity. We look for these pieces where it's like, what do we have in common? Oh, you did this thing, I did that thing. So the curiosity, first thing, seeking familiarity. What do we share? Where are our touch points? And then the curiosity comes in around being surprised of this person sitting in front of me is actually a concert pianist. This person in front of me, I can dissolve enough of my assumptions about them to allow them to surprise me. And questions really play a big role in this, because the quality of questions that we ask so much determines the quality of our life. And this is because quality of questions lead to quality of conversation. Quality of conversations lead to the quality of relationships. And of course, as we're exploring in this life and love post-COVID, the quality of our relationships are so directly related to the quality of our entire lives.
Yes.
So I really invite us in this space of curiosity to develop a list of questions, to notice when someone asks you something that you really like, to write it down, to have a tool set for getting curious so that you don't necessarily have to be spontaneously witty in the moment. You have questions that help you receive answers. A variation of asking someone how their day was that my partner Dom Franks taught to me was asking someone, share with me your favorite 10 minutes of this day. Which can provide so much more richness than the standard play-by-play that we get. Oh, well, I had this for breakfast and then I did this errand and then I picked up this thing, where really we're wanting to know where the other person's at. What is the essence of their day? What is the flavor that is alive for them? And so if we can find ways of tweaking the questions that we ask, we can find more access to the touch points that we want to be connecting to in the people near us.
Yeah. And I just think about, I mean, I taught interviewing skills at Amazon for years. And I think about how many people I ask the same freaking questions to, right? And how we're so used, we get on autoplay. You know, we as humans have been talking to each other for our lifetimes. And you don't even, I think most people don't actually check in and pause. It's like, how are you? Fine. Good. You? Right? It's like, we don't even think. So to create an opportunity to actually pause and think and check in and be like, oh, I don't have an auto response for that one. That's where I think the juice really comes from, and where it's like, oh, you caught my attention. Right. And I love doing this, but back when I was going to bars, which doesn't happen very often now, but it was a great tool to connect with other people who you just don't expect that sort of level of intimacy in that setting. And it just doesn't happen in everyday life. So the fact that we're like, hey, let's find ways to introduce this in everyday life, including in your relationships at home, the fact that you and your partner get to play with these, you know, and make it more a part of your ritual, creativity and curiosity is a part of your ritual. It's so sexy.
Absolutely. Yes. I so agree with this. I think something about intimacy that's important to touch on that you just brought up is that it's not just about having instantaneous intimacy with strangers. So as we're emerging from COVID and we're stepping back out into the world, and we're also in partnerships we might have been in for the entirety of COVID, because we got used to being in a particular routine, we might have lost some of these pieces around the curiosity. We might have lost some of these pieces of putting the effort in, because there's an assumption that comes in of, oh, I already know this person. I know their routines. I know their way of being. But as we're emerging into this version of ourselves, that it is a form of chrysalis, it is a form of transformation. There is spaciousness to develop more curiosity and to use some of these tools to allow ourselves to be surprised even by people that we know deeply.
Yes. I love this. Is there, so I've got 2 steps so far. I don't know how many steps you have in your process.
There's quite a few. You'll have to come co-live with me in my wilderness co-living space in the Eastern Sierras in California to find out all of them.
All of them.
Another tool that works really well that comes from Authentic Relating, our international training, is noticing. So often when we come together and the first thing we do is go into informational story. Where are you from? What are you doing? What are you doing later? How is your morning? And the next domain of connection would be the emotional. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about what happened yesterday? What was alive for you when this occurred? How did this make you feel? So, and then we get into relational. And when we're in the relational domain of connecting, we are observing what is alive between us in this moment. Now that might sound kind of vague, but Ari, you and I can give a quick example for the folks that are tuning in of what this looks like. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a really simple sentence stem, which is being here with you, I notice.
Okay.
So what this does is it drops us back into our bodies and we start to observe, how does it feel to be here with this person in this present moment? What is arising within me? So I'll kick us off. So Ari, being here with you, I notice like a warmth in my belly. It's kind of a little bit of a tingling and a warmth. I feel a closeness with you, even though we're so far away. I feel like a little bit of a desire coming up in me, a desire for approval, this little sweet part that's like, ooh, I hope I'm doing well. And I feel a tenderness right here at the base of my throat.
Thank you for sharing. Kaela, being here with you, I'm noticing some sadness in my throat, like longing, like missing one of my people. I'm just being like, why is she so far away? And I am noticing a lot of like relief, like release. It's like, oh my God, we haven't gotten to connect in months, and here we are, and it's just as it's always been, and that's just really beautiful. And I'm noticing just a lot of warmth too. Like my heart feels really warm and like all like giddy. Like we're here right now. And then based off of what you were sharing, I was noticing I'm like, oh, Kaela, you're doing great. You're such a rock star. And what does it matter? This is all for fun for us,
So fun. It's so fun. Oh.
That's what I'm noticing right now.
So if we were to continue playing in this, the next sentence stem that I would introduce is hearing this, I notice. And another alternative to that is sharing impact. So often in conversation, we jump sentence to sentence, and I can give an example of sharing impact. So like, Ari, when you speak these words to me, I noticed when you spoke of sadness, I felt like a little contraction, a little bit of a wave of guilt. And then when you spoke of like how it feels for you to be present with me in this moment, I also felt that relief that you were speaking to land in my body.
Yeah.
So in sharing impact with Ari, what's happening is I'm relating to her experience in a way that's beyond just the words. I'm observing the sensation that she has, and then that I'm having a similar sensation. So there's these bonds of solidarity that start to form when we begin to notice in present moment time what is alive for us when we're with each other.
I love it. I love it. And there's something I want to speak into for just a moment. For some people tuning in, you might be like, that's really cool. You just did this exercise, but when would I ever use this in real life?
Absolutely.
So how do you do that? How do you like invite this level of intimacy in?
This is a great question. So you want to ask for consent. Intimacy is something that's consensual, and you might be talking to someone who has had such a hard week that they really only want to talk about baseball and what they had for dinner, and it's important that the person with the lowest common denominator desire for depth, that we respect that, but it's also your choice about staying in conversation with that person. There's no obligation to stay in conversation that's not meeting and satisfying your needs for connection. But I would say initially, it's just about inviting someone into the space and being vulnerable and like, hey, I'm kind of tired of answering the typical questions. Like, nice to meet you. I'm kind of tired of answering the typical questions. Are you willing to play a game with me? And that's usually the way that I voice it. I'm like, I voice it as a game. And the degrees of depth and intimacy that you get to are up to you. But if you're like, hey, do you want to play a game? Why don't we drop the story? We spend so much time in our story and we just notice things back and forth. And I've done this with strangers on a street where it was like, I noticed that this street smells like urine. And I notice that I am really sweaty right now and like tired. And so it doesn't have to be this deep, spiritual, profound thing, but the aliveness in noticing, simply noticing, is what brings us into shared moment. And at the end of the day, whatever tools you can use to get into a shared moment is what intimacy is leaning towards. So it's about initially being a little vulnerable. It's about that invitation into the game. It's about that invitation of, do you want to have a relationship or a conversation that is a little different, that's a little deeper? Are you willing to meet me here? Are you curious?
I love this so much. We could talk for days, I feel like, on end about this and intimacy. It's so juicy. Thank you for sharing this. And we just have to do more. That's the answer. More. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that you didn't get in our quick chat today?
I mean, this really, we're all just scratching the surface. Like, as we're starting to understand our need for human connection, everyone in this field is a researcher. And some of you have heard the concept of skin hunger coming up, especially during COVID, of we actually have this longing for human contact and for skin contact. And I could go on for days about why platonic intimacy is important and why having hugs and closeness and snuggling that doesn't have sexual arousal is so important for our health. But really, like, most of this is experiential. So I want to invite you to start playing in your lives. Where is it safe to access more intimacy? And if you start with the people that are close to you, spending a little more time in physical contact, spending a little more time in conversations that touch the tender parts of you, spending a little more time out of the informational realms. And then we can begin to spread that. And for those of you that don't feel like you have access to this, where you are in this moment, I invite you to look for places like Authentic. Start to practice some of these tools. And for those of you that, want the full-on immersion, I run a co-living space where we run wilderness expeditions and co-living in California. And we do month-long and 2-month-long immersion pods where we focus on our connection to self, connection to each other, and connection to nature in building and deepening intimacy as a way of life.
So cool. What's the name of your house?
Montaya Base Camp.
Montaya Base Camp. We'll share all of your links, but those just listening in, how do we find you?
So this is fun. Me personally, if you would like to find me, all of my handles and emails and websites are Find Kaela. So that's FINDKAELA at Gmail. Find Kaela on Instagram. Find Kaela on Facebook. And findkaela.com, because I have been location independent for long enough that is the most efficient way for you to find me.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
We'll share the links for Montaya Basecamp below, but montaya.com is our umbrella website. And then on Facebook, Montaya Basecamp, you can find all of the information that you need if you'd like to come join us.
So good. And you also run a group for Authentic Relating California, correct?
Yes, which we can share the link for as well.
That'd be great. If anybody has not heard of, you're cut out just a little bit, and I don't know if it's my internet, but I just want to be clear that there is something around the globe called Authentic Relating or Authentic Relating Games, and you can Google it. There are meetup groups all around the world, and it's a really wonderful place to get started with. How do you start learning this art form that Kaela is quite masterful at? And Kaela, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all this with us. And so juicy, so juicy. If you want to know more and you're tuning in later, feel free to comment right below our video, or, wherever feels appropriate. You can reach out to Kaela herself, or you can comment here. I'll pull Kaela back into the group to reply to you. And I'll provide my 2 cents if it's helpful. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a beautiful day. Kaela, thank you so much. And I look forward to the next time you and I get to connect. All right.
Thank you so much, Ari.
Bye.